this good-looking man, Sean Bailey, coming in live from Christchurch. If you are on the live, welcome along for the next 20 minutes. We're going to be talking leadership and what you can take away from this young genius here and his interesting backstory. Sean Bailey, welcome along to today's live.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Good. You look like you've got all the gear to set up. Look at that big microphone in front of you.
Yeah, we're all ready to go. Looking forward.
We're ready to go. Let's dive into it then. You do have an interesting journey or different backstory. You want to just talk us through your backstory of education to what you're doing now?
Yeah, great. Before I start, big welcome to all the people joining this live today. Great to have you here. In terms of my journey, it's been a great journey in terms of my career. I've been in education for 25 plus years, and 10 of those years have been spent leading two great schools in Christchurch in New Zealand. It's been an awesome experience. The most recent position was the opportunity to start a brand new school to Urutarata, Lemonwood Grove. And that's an incredible role I fulfilled for just over 4 years. And I finished that role in 2020 and started my own company as a leadership consultant and coach. And there were some reasons that got me to that decision to be able to make that change in terms of doing something different in regards to my career. So if I can have some time, I might just explain that whole process in terms of change.
So let's just take you back. So what did you love about being a principal in a school?
Lots of parts. I think the biggest thing I loved was the opportunity to be able to develop and empower leaders within the school and teachers within the school in order for them to take their practice from good to great. There were lots of different opportunities I had throughout that journey to be able to do that. And I think that just goes to show that whole power of collaboration and working together to be able to achieve great outcomes as a team. I really enjoyed that part.
And you mentioned collaboration. Do you miss that? Do you miss the school environment, that learning environment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when you've spent so much of your career around people, influencing people, being around people, takes a while to be able to adjust to now working independently, but also making the most of opportunities now to surround myself with great people and work with great individuals and teams. So I try and make sure that continues to be the focus, which is awesome.
So what was it? What was the trigger point for you? You'd spent 4 to 6 years in the education sector. What was the trigger to move to leadership coaching?
Okay, so in just at the end of 2017, I come unstuck health-wise. I was running a half marathon and I collapsed. I thought I was having a heart attack, but what happened was I actually had and my aortic valve was calcifying at such an enormous rate. It was a birth defect. And my cardiologist said to me, if I hadn't have collapsed in that half marathon, I would have only had another 18 months to live. So I guess that was a pretty confronting time of my life where I decided that I needed to take handle of my life and be able to make the most of it. And so after that stage, I contracted diverticulitis, which is a bowel disease. And so my system was just getting hammered. And so I actually needed to stop and focus around getting well and looking after myself. And happy to talk about that aspect maybe throughout the interview as well, in terms of the lessons I learned from that. So I decided to spend some time recovering. And during that time, I had the opportunity to be able to decide what my next steps were going to be. And I decided whatever I was going to do, I wanted to continue influencing people in a great way. So leadership coaching and mentoring leaders, but also educationalists, and now people outside of education seemed a pretty logical choice at the time.
Are you saying that the education sector, again, this is a layman's question, and people are not, working within the education sector, you feel is stressful?
Look, no doubt. I think in terms of leadership, when leading schools, there are lots of pains, problems, challenges that leaders have to deal with. And I think external pressures like COVID has just added to those pressures and those challenges. So I guess the good thing about what I'm doing now is being able to work with these great people in places like schools to be able to continue to influence them and empower them and upskill them to be able to continue on that whole journey of working with others and improving people, because it can become quite relentless sometimes. It's quite a lonely, isolated job. I think reflecting back, you're surrounded by lots of different people, but at the end of the day, it's you that's in charge and you that has to make the decisions. And so you actually need people externally sometimes to support you in that role. And I think it's just really, really important to be able to have those people in your life that you can be coached by or mentored by. And so I think that's the great thing about what I'm doing now, being able to continue to support people, for example, leaders in schools.
So, yeah, if you are watching this live, if you have any questions, and if you are a teacher, if you are in the education sector and you're watching this, please comment with your name. And if you have any questions for Sean, we'd love to get your feedback, get your questions in this live, so we can Sean can better. At least advance that conversation for you. Let's go back to those lessons you talked about when you were recovering. How long was your recovery, and what were some of those lessons you learned about yourself?
Okay, so the recovery period, I gave myself actually a year. So after I resigned and finished my position as the foundation principal, as I said, I needed some time to recover and get well. And so I made the most of that time. So after that period of recovery, I actually took some time to be able to, and I was lucky because I had that opportunity. I was able to do that, to be able to actually think really carefully about what that next stage of my career was going to look like. Because when you get to my age, around midlife, you want to, whatever you do, it needs to be a great decision in terms of your career, and especially if you really value what you do. And so I think sometimes you've just got to give yourself that space and time to be able to get clear. I surrounded myself with great people, made lots of connections, for example, through LinkedIn, caught up with people, just did a lot of brainstorming around exactly what I wanted to do. So by the time, what part of that process was developing a really clear purpose. So by the time I got to that stage that I knew what I wanted to do, it's like, it gave me a great deal of confidence. So I think my recommendation would be, if you come to that stage in your career where you want to make some changes, give yourself that gift of time, if you have it, to be able to make those changes in a great way.
I'm glad you mentioned purpose, because we had a conversation just last week about the 3 Ps. What are those 3 Ps?
Okay, so this is the great thing that I'm doing with a lot of the organizations and individuals I'm working with at the moment. I think the biggest deal breaker for me was using an approach, for example, that it comes across from people like Simon Sinek. He talks about developing a why, a purpose. So people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, as in your whole purpose of being and living and working. So the great thing is, as I said to you before, I've been given the opportunity to do that myself, actually spend time developing a clear purpose statement around not only what I want from work, but what I want from life. Because as you know, a purpose can be driven by lots of external factors or internal factors in regards to how you're living as a person. And I think if you're good about it, being in terms of your life, it's going to impact greatly on the work that you do. So they are interconnected. So that's the first process. Now, the next process is getting really clear around the principles that actually drive that purpose. And so principles can be values or value driven. So I think they're the things that you actually, at the end of the day, hang your hat on in terms of, your beliefs, what the things that you really believe and value. And then the next stage is actually thinking about the types of practices that you're going to put into place in your life to be able to live and breathe those principles, and most importantly, that purpose. So it's a really great process to be involved in. And I can't recommend it enough. And using myself as an example when I'm working with clients to be able to talk about that process has been really fulfilling, to be able to use myself as an example.
Applying those 3 Ps, purpose, principles, and practices, how would you apply that to, say, a school or a principal or a teacher within that schooling environment?
Great question. I think the first thing that I talked about before was getting really clear around a true sense of yourself. So if you're a leader in a school, my recommendation would be to spend some valuable time actually carrying out that process yourself, because as I said before, you can't impact greatly on other people unless you're really good about yourself. So I think my recommendation would be, before you work with a large group, for example, within a school, or a smaller group, for example, actually you spend time doing that yourself. Because if you're going to talk about your purpose as a leader, you have to actually have role modeled and actually followed through that process yourself first, because you're walking the talk. You're being able to practice what you preach. And I think that's really important.
I can really hear your passion, Sean. It's just listening to you. It really is that you really have defined that purpose. You really have been crystal clear on your pathway, so then you can inspire others to help them. What type of a process do you take clients through? Is it like do people work with you in workshops, or do they work with you ongoingly? How do they do that?
Okay, the first thing probably to talk about is the fact that during my period of recovery and when I got well, I actually undertook a coaching qualification. So I'm an ICF, or International Coaching Federation, organizational and executive coach. So coaching is a framework. It's an improvement framework. So when I'm working with clients, I use that coaching framework to be able to enable them and empower them around improvement. So coaching's a great process. It differs from mentoring. I think in the past, I've received quite a lot of mentoring from great people I've worked with in the past, as in you go to them for some quick advice and they give it to you, and you may or may not go away and act that advice out. But coaching's a whole lot different. It's based on a framework that allows the client or the coachee to be empowered through the use of effective questioning. So it's about the coach asking great defined questions that actually allow the person who's being coached to be able to be, to have some light bulb moments and be empowered and actually think, yeah, I can do this job, especially as a leader, especially when how difficult it can be sometimes, to be able to say, yeah, walking away from a coaching conversation and looking at some outcomes and actions and thinking, yes, I've got this and I can continue doing my job in a great way. So coaching's more a longer game sometimes. So some of the people I coach, it could be one-off coaching conversations, but sometimes if the issue, challenge, pain, or problem is quite big, it may warrant an extended period of coaching conversations. So it really depends on what the client or the person that you're coaching needs at the time. And sometimes that takes a while to be able to determine that, but the outcomes are great when you actually spend time doing that.
But working with leaders in the education sector, you really have walked in their shoes. So you're pretty clear around some of those challenges, those long-term and short-term challenges that they're facing. What are those immediate problems do you see that particularly school leaders are facing at the moment?
Yeah, in terms of some of the complexities, I think school leadership in normal circumstances or a normal environment is hard and can be challenging, can be great, but can also involve lots of challenges. But you add another layer like COVID, for example, it just extends those challenges. And I think one thing that's become really apparent to me over the last few months is that I think as New Zealanders, often we want to keep going. We want to keep persisting. We don't want to admit any weaknesses or the need to be helped. And I think one of the biggest breakthroughs is actually acknowledging sometimes when it is hard, when it's really difficult and challenging, that admitting that you might need some help and then seeking that help. I think that's one of the biggest learnings I've experienced as an ex-leader. In order to be able to improve, we need to keep surrounding ourselves with great people and be supported around the awesome work that we do as leaders. We can't often just do it by ourselves. We often need that support from other people to enable us to be able to be great. So yeah, COVID has been, in terms of school leadership, often there's become more of a reliance on schools to solve some of those problems, external problems that are happening in our communities, that schools are being now expected to step up and provide all of that support. So in terms of school leadership, that can be a big ask to be able to expect leaders in schools, for example, to keep developing those requirements that are often expected by other people. Yeah.
You use the word empower or empower you. It's also the name of your business, empowernz.co.nz. What does that word say about you? And I guess really what I want to ask is, how does it speak to you?
Yeah, I think power, for example, can be an interesting word. It's a powerful word in itself. But I guess when I was deciding the name of my company, it wasn't about me necessarily. It was actually about my intent or my intentions around helping and supporting other people and empowering other people. So that's what, as I said to you before, I really enjoy doing. And it's something that, it's a word that's got some guts, and when people, it's a word, when you say it, it feels quite empowering. So it's sort of like you want your brand and your label in terms of your business to have an impact. And I think that word certainly does it. But as I said, it's more about what it means to other people or the clients I'm working with, not necessarily about me as a business owner.
And you said before, people need mentors, they need coaches. I've got a coach, I've got a marketing coach, we've got mentors in our lives, and they are all external, right? So you're 100% right. From a business owner perspective, we all need those guiding lights. You talk about impact. What sort of impact have you had with clients? Any success stories you'd like to share?
Plenty. In terms of an example, I put a post up on LinkedIn this morning, actually, around a school leader working out of China. And I think that's the great thing about being able to work remotely now. I know doing business on Zoom is not always ideal, but it can enable and empower you to be able to reach great people. And through LinkedIn, I got a contact from a principal working in China, coming back to New Zealand mid-year. And she, like me, wants to make some changes in her career, and reached out in terms of wanting some coaching to be able to work through, I think, some of those challenges that she's experiencing to start off with, about moving out of a very stable environment in terms of being a school leader, for example, into maybe doing something completely different. And often, to make a big life-changing event like that, you need people to be able to help you to be able to do that. So that's been a really great example. Cool thing I've been doing as well is starting to work externally outside of schools and some small, medium and larger sized organizations. I've got a contract with a large government organization at the moment with a number of leaders. So coaching, supporting those people in those roles through some of those challenges that they're experiencing as well. So great thing about my role is I get the opportunity to work with a number of different clients in education, but also outside of education as well, which is awesome.
And how can people get in touch with you? You're probably just on LinkedIn like me. You're easily found. But for those people, is there anything on your website that people can use?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website gives a lot of information around what I do, my whys in there, and my purpose. And in the website, there's also an opportunity to contact me and make a connection in terms of having a chat in regards to how I might be able to help you out and around some coaching and development as well.
Last question, and just want to see if you've memorized it. What is Sean Bailey's Empower You NZ's purpose?
Okay, so my purpose is around enabling and empowering leaders and taking their practice from good to great. So continuing to support people in that space. So yeah, it's a great purpose. I'm really pleased with it.
It's okay. It flowed. It's good. If you'd like anything else that you'd like to mention today, Sean.
Thank you for the opportunity. In terms of the work that I'm doing, really, it is an empowering role, and I really enjoy my role as a leadership coach and consultant. And if you're considering, a change in your career, give me a call. Maybe that's something that you might need some or might want some coaching around. So thank you for the opportunity.
Sean Bailey, thank you so much for your time today. As I said, if you are in the education sector or you're in business and you want the support of a coach, of a consultant, of a mentor, then Sean Bailey is your man. Thanks for your time today, Sean. Have a great Wednesday.
Thank
Tuesday.
you.